glad to see the ones that braved it out today. Yay for you guys. Yeah, really good. So, today we've got Leland Harden, and I met Leland at Lindale Memory Care, and he's been a real help to us in making a transition with my mom into memory care and that kind of thing. But as I've gotten to know Leland, I found out that, you know, he's written like 5 books, and you go to Amazon and find them, and he started numerous companies and been involved with companies, startup at the kind of the Silicon Valley narrative. So I've asked Leland to come and share with us today and just tell us some of his stories. So Leland, come on up.
It's great to be here. I can remember in one of my startups in San Francisco, it was one that didn't work, and then I just rolled right into another company, and the lawyer that I was using for the structure, corporate setup and everything, I said, "Can you believe I'm into another startup?" And all he said was, "Leland, you were born to be an entrepreneur." So that's probably the greatest compliment I've ever gotten. I was raised here in Abilene, moved here when I was 8 years old, and went to Bonham, Lincoln, Abilene High, and Hardin Simmons. And then when I was done with Hardin Simmons, while I was there, a professor said, "Those that want," and this is in 1984, okay, a long time ago, a professor, I was thinking it was called information systems, that's all they taught at that time. Not much coding, but a little bit. And he said, "Those that want to be successful in the future are those that will control the access to information." And that kind of stuck with me. As you can tell, I'm still quoting it all these years later. And fortunately, I went to a recruiter in Dallas and got put in front of a company called Data Times. They were owned by Gaylord Broadcasting Corporation out of Oklahoma City. And there, they had started Data Times, which was selling archival newspaper information online. And so I was selling online access to information in 1985. So I've been in the information technology world since then. Mike told me telling my story was probably the best thing to do. I used to have a whole presentation on what it is to be an entrepreneur, but I'll share my story, and hopefully it will inspire you to ask a question or two, or to start another company. So at Data Times, I was in their office in Dallas for a while, for a year. Then after a year, they moved me to their home office in Oklahoma City, and decided to try a new marketing technique. Instead of having offices in cities all around the country, they said, "We'll put you in Oklahoma City, and you can just fly to where the business is and go do that." So for a year, I was selling access to the Chicago Sun-Times online, and literally every other week I would commute from Oklahoma City to Chicago. In that year, I became their #1 salesman in the country. And so towards the end of that year, they said, I think they had revenue goals to make or something. So someone at a board meeting somewhere, I wasn't there, just said, "Hey, I got an idea. Let's send Leland to New York." So I started commuting towards the end of, that would have been 1986, to Manhattan, and selling in Manhattan for several trips, about 3 or 4 trips. While there, of course, the best way to make inroads into a market is to go to your competitor. So I was sitting at the Journal of Commerce on Wall Street in their big tower, and literally the editor had a helipad on top of the building, and that's how he would get to work, taking a helicopter into work. But I was selling, and they were part of Night River Corporation, a newspaper company, media company, and it was called Butex. So I was selling data times to the entire library staff at the Journal of Commerce. During that, a gentleman came and sat down and listened for a while, and then stood up and he said, "Leland, when you're done here, I want you to come see me." And it was Stan Erickson was his name. He was the managing editor of the Journal of Commerce. I went to see him after the meeting, and his first thoughts, first words were, "Leland, you're really good at what you do." And I said, "Well, thank you. I enjoy doing what I do." Then he said something that's weird to hear in a skyscraper on Wall Street. He said, "Leland, I don't know if you're a praying man, but I feel like God has sent you here for me to tell you about this."
Wow.
And then he told me that he had some friends who were starting a company called MediaLink. They were in Midtown Manhattan, and they needed a director of marketing. And so he put me in touch with them. The next day, I was in their Midtown offices interviewing with them to perhaps become the director of marketing for MediaLink. I was 22 years old. And they were just like, man, one of them was Larry Moskowitz. He was this, very nervous kind of guy. He always had his fingernails bit down to the cuticles, that kind of guy. Why would, we want to hire a guy who lives from Texas, who lives in Oklahoma City, when there's all these people in Manhattan who are experienced in public relations and television and all of that? And the other guy was a guy named Robert Frump. He was their Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter. And he still remains one of my best friends in the whole world. But I just looked at him and said, and of course I was 22. That's the filter to put on this. I said, "You can interview anybody you want. You can't find anybody better." And so that was, towards mid-December. I was home for Christmas and just kept talking to the guys. And they finally said, "Leland, we want you to move to New York. We want you to be our director of marketing for MediaLink." And so I think I was employee number 3 or 4. What was cool about this, there were, one of the primary luminaries, a gentleman on our board was Al Primo. He was the vice president of ABC News and the founder and creator of the eyewitness news format. So he hired Geraldo Rivera. It's all Al's fault. Just getting to know him, he also remains a very, very good friend, and just the connections you could get from that. So we launched MediaLink, and in the 4 years there, really set them up to go public. They did a few years later. In 1990, I had the entrepreneurial bug to do it myself instead of just being, the second or third employee. I wanted to be the guy. So I moved to Silicon Valley to launch digital conference television. And this was doing live video conferences. And it was the very early days of using, you had to have dedicated T1 lines or Telnet or all kinds of lines to get your data. There was not a way to really just it's all desktop now. It's Skype, you can do all this. We have video conferencing rooms. So I was able to acquire the video conferencing division of Olympia in Europe, which was a major real estate company, which was in distress at that time. And so I took over their video conferencing company in business. And we did that about 2 or 3 years. It was all moving to the desktop. I guess in retrospect, I should have been on top of pushing that and not just having that one way of doing video conferencing, which was rooms, dedicated facilities for it. So after that, one didn't really go anywhere. After several years there, I was sending out resumes, and I had a friend of church who said, "Well, I know a guy who's a headhunter. Why don't you send your info to him?" He gave me all the info, and I sent my information to guy named Bob Heyman. And a few days later, Bob called me and said, Leland, we don't really have any jobs that fit what you want to do. But I've been getting all these people calling me asking us for consultants and to consult on things. And I figured you and I can go in together and consult on some projects together. So I said, sure, whatever. So there was a company, a very young company. Right back then you had CompuServe and AOL, and what was the other one? They were all dedicated networks. They weren't internet, but they had their own, they were closed communities. If it comes to your mind, let me know. I might pop out with it in a minute. But and this was a group called Total Entertainment Network. This kid was launching a online game community where you could play back and forth together. It was all dedicated, Total Entertainment Network. So their VC firm had called us in to help them come up with a launch plan. So we wrote a business plan, a marketing plan, a whole launch for Total Entertainment Network. And me and Bob and a big agency were the two finalists. And Bob and I just met, we hardly knew each other. Ultimately, they gave it to the agency, but they said, you guys really have something here. And Bob was like, Leland, maybe we should create a company. And so I was temping in those days, riding a bus on Geary Boulevard in San Francisco. I started thinking, it's all about cyber. People don't understand, because the internet was very nascent at that point. This was around the beginning of 1992. And in 1993 is really when the internet took off. They had Mark Andreessen and his friends at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign had just written a program called Mosaic. And that was how you would look. That was the first web browser and the graphical interface, because all before it was menus and prompts and everything. And it was kind of just moving along. Then at the beginning of 1993, the New York Times did an article about how Mosaic is taking off, and that is when the web exploded. And we were right there at the very beginning of it. So I was like, people don't understand the cyber world. They need to know how to navigate it. So I took two words, cyber and nautica, which is navigation, and created Cybernautics. That was the name of our agency. We started looking at how you translate what happens in the offline world, the real world, and taking that and moving it to online and creating that analog. This is how you would do this online. So how do you do word of mouth? How do you do PR? How do you do, there was no advertising on the web at that point. It was before banner ads, before any of that. So how do you create this buzz online? So we started going to Usenet and news groups and doing link exchanges, creating, because the biggest sites on the web back then and still today are those that have the most links out of them. So it was all about having links and getting people to link. And that company grew from just the two of us to more than 50, 60 people. Our clients included ABC News, CNN, AOL, Avon, S.C. Johnson and Sons, Johnson & John. I mean, we literally, of the Fortune top 100, we had probably 25 to 30% of those as our clients. We went from thinking it was cool to get $1,000 a month retainer to doing, $10,000, $20,000 a month. Plus, at that point, advertising started coming on, so we were placing advertising, and we were getting $1 million, $2 million, $3 million ad buys all at once, and just, running with those. We were in Sausalito, California, and we put our company headquarters at Schoonmaker Point Harbor. And our offices, literally, they had been where people would store their boats or yachts before. So in the front of the offices were garage doors, so you could raise it up, and you would have this office that was just, and of course, this is Northern California. I mean, they hit 90 degrees maybe twice a year. So we would just have the doors open, and I remember one of our employees was on the phone with a client in New York, and the client said, "Wow, is that bird's eye here?" And Chrissy said, yeah. On the really nice days, we'll just open the front of the office. It's a big garage door, and the New York person, those birds are outside. But literally, we were right on the water. One of our employees lived on a yacht just right across from the entrance to our office. His shortest commute days were when the tide was up, so he could just hop over the fence. Otherwise, he'd have to ride. But we did have employees who would kayak to work. This is very California. I wore a ponytail back then. It was awesome. It's still my dream to get it back. I gave it to my wife for her 40th birthday. We were a dog-friendly office. People could bring their dogs to work. I mean, these are kids. This was their first job out of college, many of our employees. And they thought this is how work was always. They had no clue after the dot-com bust, how it really works. They were getting stock options and making 25, 30 grand a week just on exercising options and stuff like that. But as we were getting into that, there was a big trade show. I think it was at E3, the big electronic entertainment expo, was in San Francisco, and a lady called and asked for a meeting. She was from New York, and I had lunch with her, and she said, "Everyone's talking about what you guys are doing and how you're creating marketing online. I'm with a division of Simon & Schuster. We would like you to write a book on it." And here, in college, I was the guy that looked at the syllabus to figure out what I had to do to not write the research paper. And I was now being asked to write a book. And so we went out and got an agent and negotiated with him, got a very handsome upfront fee, and wrote a book that was called Net Results, Web Marketing That Works. It became the Bible of online marketing in 1997. And I didn't know that until we were asked to speak for an MBA class at Stanford University. And named for Leland Stanford, by the way. Everyone thought, "Did your parents go to Stanford?" I said, "No, my name's the most creative thing they ever did." So we're at this class full of MBAs, Stanford MBAs, and the professor says, "Okay, take out your textbooks." These are the guys that wrote it. Net Results Web Marketing That Works was the textbook at Stanford School of Business, at Wharton School of Business, at Columbia School of Business. I was shocked. Then it started, and I really didn't think much about it, because it was cool having written a book. And then you start going into meetings and people ask you to sign their book. That was just a really head trip. I really enjoyed it a lot. And subsequently, we wrote the sequel to that because the first was so darn successful. After that, I wrote the auction app because eBay was just starting to take off then. So I wrote a book about how you do online auctions, how that can translate into your business, how dynamic pricing models can change how you do all of your business. And then a few years later, as it was heating up again, our publisher called and said, "Hey, it's time for you guys, you should write another book." And we had our agent at that time shopped it around, and that one sold to the American Management Association. It's called Digital Engagement. And then the AMA, they have education centers worldwide, they retained us to become work with their curriculum developers to write all of the curriculum for online marketing for AMA centers worldwide. And so we did that. That was a lot of fun. And finally, our curriculum developer said, the AMA is also, they need a book on marketing ROI. There's no one talking about why you market, how you measure it, and all that. So my co-author called our editor at the AMA and said, we're hearing that you might like a book on marketing ROI. She said, yeah, have it to me on Monday, and I'll take it to the editor's meeting. And so I wrote the proposal. That was on Friday when she told him that. So over that weekend, I wrote the proposal for marketing by the numbers, and by Tuesday, we had another retainer to write that book. That was, and we were still promoting net results. Digital engagement. But then, okay, let's go back to Cybernautics days. Having a lot of fun and making inroads with lots of people. We were acquired by US Web, and that was a roll-up of internet companies that they were rolling up to take public. And I became one of their featured speakers for the company. Ultimately, when we went public, the company had over 1,000 people, and there was like 2 or 3 that they would send out to conferences all over the world to be their speakers. I was one of them, and spoke in London and just everywhere. It was a blast. And of course, we took that public, and that was really fun being part of an IPO. It's something I'd always dreamed of. Then I'd been at a conference before, at the beginning of the e-wallet stuff, before you could do credit cards on the internet or anything like that. They were trying to come up with ways of doing an e-wallet of some kind and online currencies. And a guy was speaking, and he was with an e-wallet company, and his example was, say, for instance, you wanted to sell gift certificates online. And he was talking about how you set up the wallet. I thought, now that's a cool idea. So I went and got the domain name the next morning, giftcertificates.com. And there were a lot of people doing 800 number, call it 800 number to buy gift certificates. They were aggregating. The largest was called 1-800-PRESENTS. And I started getting calls. It was around 1996, 97. The first big e-Christmas was probably 1998. Does that sound right to you? All these people started calling me and saying, we'd like to buy your domain name, giftcertificates.com. Well, so I was getting offers for it, and ultimately I settled on, I'll take stock in your company and a board seat for the domain name. And of course, with all these books under my belt, I had a good reputation already. But ultimately, 1-800-PRESENTS called me. They were the largest. And the founder was Jonas Lee. And he said, hey, Leland, this is Jonas Lee. I said, well, hey, Jonas, I was wondering when you were going to call. And he and I got on splendidly. And ultimately, I did do the deal with him, get stock, an undisputable form of stock, and liked the guy so much that I decided to come on as executive vice president of strategy and business development for the company. So at that point, I left US Web and then went to giftcertificates.com. And it was based in New York City, and I lived in San Francisco. So I commuted every other week between San Francisco and New York. I was a 100K flyer, usually by April, and that was all just back and forth. So I knew I was spending a lot of time on the road. When I was getting my hair cut one time, and the lady cutting my hair said, okay, put your head down, and I fell asleep. Because I was really worn out. But at giftcertificates.com, we worked with the largest brands in the world, Brooks Brothers, Macy's, Nordstrom, you just named it. We had all of the big brands. And We ultimately created our own gift certificate called the Super Certificate, so corporations could buy that, give it to their employees, they could come to our site and exchange it for any other gift certificate. We were doing the practice for the roadshow to take that one public, and then everyone's cell phones and pagers started going off, and that was when the dot-com bubble burst. So we did not get that one public. That was really sad. So I was 35 and I decided to retire. And did that, hung out at home for a while and just really enjoyed that. During that time I started being like, what more can I do? And that's when I kind of got a calling to come back to Abilene, because my kids were getting of an age where I wanted them to grow up here instead of Northern California. And I came back and worked at Harden Simmons for a time, about, I don't know, 6-7 years, and started their marketing department at Harden Simmons, then became the VP of Institutional Advancement for all of their fundraising. And I really had a good time there. And after I left Harden Simmons, I kind of got roped into helping out over Royal Estates, which is now Lindale, and have enjoyed being that part, growing that missional side of me more, because I, you have to help a lot of folks out. You're part therapist as you're doing that. People replacing their parent in senior living or memory care. So it was a lot of fun. I think I've still got another startup in me. So I do believe that one of these days I'll be jumping back into the fray. I really enjoy that and enjoy being at that piece of the business at the kind of the cutting edge. That's where it's fun. So I think that's a lot of my story. Any questions? Yeah.
Okay, this might be a little.
And Leland, excuse me, repeat his question so we can pick it up.
Okay, this might not be totally in your area of expertise, but what can we do to keep the Chinese from stealing our intellectual property?
What can we do to keep the Chinese from stealing our intellectual property? Don't do business with China. That's the easiest question.
Just don't even go over there and try.
I mean, it's a massive market, so some folks think that is the ultimate trade-off. Obviously, the president is trying to negotiate that now. I don't know if he'll be successful. Even if he is, I don't know if it'll last long. So I don't know that.
Well, technologically, is there anything we can do to block them getting into our business system and sell it?
Well, that's the thing. We don't know how many. Can we do anything to block them from getting into our businesses? Is the other one. On a cybersecurity basis, I think we don't know what's really out there that's we're already carrying around, and could be issues and things where they're reading and watching everything now. Ron?
So you were in these early days of internet marketing and advertising and all of that. What is the biggest change you see from that era, the late 90s, early 2000s, like that first decade of the 21st century, and now?
Our holy grail was always, wow, all of the information you can have about the consumer and the things you can use to target your advertising specifically at them when they're looking for that. That's the holy grail. And it was the holy grail. After we've seen that grow up, it's a little scarier than I ever thought it would be. Facebook selling, aggregating it with other things and selling that data all over the place. I never conceived that it would go that far. So we realized what we were praying or hoping for all that time. And I don't know if it's a tough prize. There's a lot of responsibility with it, and I'm just not real comfortable at how it's gone. Yes.
Do you take measures to protect yourself?
Do I take measures to protect myself? Yes, I've got all of the credit monitoring services, so I know if there's any new accounts or my social security number shows up on the dark web. I'm watching that stuff all of the time. I do go in regularly into my browser and clean out the cookies that are in there and try not to let sites track me, but it's, you know, there's only so much you can do.
Leland, and if you'll repeat this, for the folks sitting around here, most of us are small business operators. You obviously worked in a world that was much bigger than that. Okay. What advice would you have from your experience that could be directly applicable to what we do day to day?
Okay, what could, you know, from a big thinking perspective, how can small business people utilize it? I've always said the web was the great equalizer. I mean, everyone has the chance to sell things all over the world. I was talking to her earlier. I was a saxophone player in growing up, and I had acquired a few more saxophones and had to liquidate one, and I sold one, a tenor sax, to a guy in Italy, and on eBay. And so I worked out how you do that and the price for shipping, and we communicated back and forth. So here I was out of my living room, my home office in San Francisco, in Marin County is where we live, and I was selling stuff to Italy. I believe that everyone has the opportunity still, even with the proliferation of sites, Amazon, selling all everywhere, being the world's largest marketplace, you can sell anywhere. And it's just a matter of researching it, digging it up, and going to do it. You can sell on Amazon. I've had a number, like I would go to the used bookstore and find interesting books, and then go to buy them there, and then sell them on Amazon for a profit. There's a way that any local business, I don't know if you're a service business, it's a little harder, but if you got product to sell, or if you can come up with product to sell, there's definitely a way to do that. If you're a service business and you can come up with presentations and information that people find that could be a benefit to them, you can sell subscriptions to that, or have the ability to sell that. I'm part of a company based here in Abilene that's called Speedy Prep, and that is an online CLEP test preparation service. CLEP tests stand for College Level Examination Program. They are administered by the College Board, the same people that do the SAT, and they've been around for years. I CLEP'd out of classes before I got into Harden Simmons. And the way it works is you take the test. If you pass the test, you get the college credit. So you never have to sit through 4 months of classwork. You can take a test, study up for it, take a test. At Speedy Prep, we've developed a good studying algorithm. It's kind of based on flashcards. And we've got a 98% pass rate of those who take our course. And it's $29.95 a month to take the coursework. Then you pay for the test, which is anywhere from $80 to $100 for the proctor fee and the cost of the test at College Board. And all the universities in town are licensed to be proctors for the CLEP tests. And so we've had people study with us a month or two and CLEP out of 4 classes. So you think about like Harden Simmons, $800 an hour. So there's $2,400 there times 4, nearly $9,600 they've saved, and they spent $60 with us, and then the testing fees. So it's a really great dynamic, but that's one way that we're selling information online. There's no physical product there. And what's great about that kind of business is that we build it once. It's a software model. Build it once, you can sell it over and over and over for no incremental cost. So it's wonderful. It's got about a 75–80% profit margin.
So, Leland, you have been in on the beginning and the middle, maybe it's the middle. Where do you see things going?
Okay, she said I've been on the beginning and in the middle. What's next? I just think you'll see continue to see the evolution of the smartphone and tablets and how that will be integrated into everything we do. I don't recommend that people get smart speakers. They might be cool, but when you find out they could be listening to everything you say, that's just a little creepy to me.
Hey, they're listening to us now, man.
So I'm not sold on smart speakers, but there is the smart home, the connected home. I have friends who have their home completely wired up, and when they get close with their car, all the lights turn on, everything gets going, because they're close to the phone. It's all set up.
So I have to ask, if you're worried about Alexa listening to you, are you not worried about Siri?
I'm very
You're carrying Siri everywhere you go.
Yeah, exactly. It is, how do you get around it? It's not just when you call it, but I'm sure it's listening all the way around. At least Apple contends that it's a closed
There's
system.
definitely marketing that. They added that to their brand
Yeah,
and made the use of their software much harder as a result.
yeah. So I do worry about all of them. Yeah.
Any chance that, the box store retailers can stay in business in the next decade?
Yeah, can box store retailers stay in business? I think so. I think you're seeing businesses hybridize, so they're both online and physical. Right now, you can buy all your H-E-B groceries online. You can buy your Walmart groceries and other things online, and they can either be delivered or you can pick them up. I just think you'll see hybrid models take over more and more, because you're going to have to be able to compete with Amazon, the world's largest marketplace, in some form or fashion.
So are they gonna be more like warehouses versus retail stores?
I think they'll still have the retail model. I don't think they'll go away.
Maybe both?
Yeah, yeah. And of course, what is a supermarket but a big warehouse that looks nice and you can walk through it? So I think you'll see both. I don't see that going away. I see, this is something I predicted in 1993 when we started. I said, you will see television and the internet merge. Well, we're right in the middle of that. It's happening. I was talking about it a long time ago. So that will continue to happen as well. I see cable companies having a harder and harder time based on their model. So they're going to become more like internet companies, content companies, and have a better way to access the information instead of all of these channels at once. Yeah.
So do you think in that, thinking about cable companies and having been in a lot of startups, do you think that cable companies can adapt, or do you just, because I mean, if you look at Netflix is replacing a cable company, right? And cable companies, whenever they try to do something like that, just seem to never get it right. You know what I mean?
Well, the problem is with any, he's like, do cable companies, are they going to get it right, or will they go away? The problem with any form of disruptive technology is that the legacy technologies and legacy models aren't willing to cannibalize themselves to do what it takes to grow. So you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and really be willing to take that reduction in revenue initially to win the long game. And when you have Wall Street and investors breathing down your neck all the time, it's hard to make the case, well, we're going to do this, we're going to be okay in the long run, but it's going to hurt for a while. I mean, you've got to feed the earnings beast, which makes it very difficult to do that. What they'll do is try to stay alive as long as they can, find someone that's been doing it well, and acquire them and roll them into what they do. That's typically the model that people have. Yes, sir.
Get back to the, like, HEB, buying stuff online and things like that. Does that are we keeping more people off the streets and out in the public? instead of going out and buying your groceries, you got somebody reading to you, or you're gonna leave the house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, will you ever leave the house if everything's delivered to you? I don't know, there's some folks that don't. And there's some shut-ins that it's very difficult, and their family are buying their groceries and having them delivered to them. Because these are people who don't have their driver's license anymore, they're not allowed to, because they can't see well enough or get lost when they do go out. So, I think you will have a certain segment that never leaves, because you can work from home. You can do everything you need. Even if you get a paper check anymore, you don't have to take it and deposit it. You take a picture of it and through your banking app, and it's deposited.
Isn't that unhealthy? Not to ever leave the house.
I say, I can say it could be very unhealthy.
Crazy.
Yeah, and that's why you're seeing more and more people, you know, they're insular, they're just caught up in their own little world, and, you know, that's why I think we'll see that revolution of people pushing for less screen time instead of more, and that'll be good. Is that it?
Let's give